So let's start. So welcome everybody to the Reverse Mentoring, the Key to Reciprocal Growth and Innovation webinar today. As you will see, we have representation from two businesses. So there's us at Henderson Scott, and we've also got a Scottish enterprise as well. So firstly, I'm just going to give a very brief overview to both businesses, and then I'll introduce you to the guest speakers. So an overview of Henderson Scott to begin with. So Henderson Scott is a global recruitment partner. And in the UK, we specialise in placing digital, technology and go-to-market professionals locally and across Europe. Together with Search, we are part of an award-winning search recruitment group who has been recognised for commitment not only to our clients and candidates we serve, but to our employees as well. And then the other people that we have on the call this afternoon are our two representatives from Scottish Enterprise. So a little bit of an overview of those guys. Scottish Enterprise is Scotland's national economic development agency. They work to transform the Scottish economy by helping businesses innovate and scale and helping them build productive and engaged workforces that underpin sustainable and competitive businesses. As an investors in people, they're committed to supporting and developing their people in both external and in-house opportunities, including mentoring, of course, coaching and job shadowing. So everyone at Scottish Enterprise is encouraged to make space for in their diaries for personal development, which is very, very similar to us at Henderson Scott as well. So let me introduce you to the guest speakers. So firstly, we've got Fiona Clark that you can see on your screens here. So Fiona is a people development business partner at Scottish Enterprise and is the lead for all Scottish Enterprise on coaching and mentoring activities, hence why Fiona's on the call today. And Mark Newlands is head of global companies at Scottish Enterprise, and Mark was a mentee for the reverse mentoring program that they've run recently, so he's going to share his insight on that. And last but not least, we've got Emma Tugwell, who's our group head of talent development here at Henderson Scott. So to give you a little bit of an overview about the topic itself, so some of you may have heard of reverse mentoring, some of you may not. Typically, if you think of the word mentoring, you would think about people being mentored from top down. So that would usually be senior leaders guiding lower level members of staff. But the tides are changing and younger and less senior professionals are now teaching up the ladder. The concept was first developed in the 1990s to share technology skills. However, reverse mentoring is prevalent in this current world because of its potential to help companies overcome new challenges like hybrid working, diversity and inclusion, and breaking down those generational divides, which I know has been very, very prevalent in Scottish Enterprises programme. So alongside the benefits of reverse mentoring at an organisational level, there are many benefits from a mentee and mentor perspective, which our guest speakers Mark and Fiona are here to shed some light on today. Now, a bit of housekeeping before I go in and ask our guest speakers some questions. As an audience, you can ask questions. If you have a look at the top ribbon there, you'll see a button that says Q&A. So if you want to ask any questions throughout the webinar, please click that button and type your question into that. And if we have time at the end of the webinar today, we'll get to as many questions as we possibly can. Okay, so I'll stop talking now. That's enough of me. And the first question is going to start with yourself, Emma. So I'll come to you first. Can you talk me through the benefits of reverse mentoring from your perspective?
Yeah, of course. So I think it's key to point out at the start that we're still very much in our infancy at Henderson Scott with rolling out this programme, but it's personally something that I've seen a lot of benefits from. So I'll talk you through that in a second. But as a whole, reverse mentoring is a really valuable tool for both individuals and businesses. From an internal perspective, it creates that culture of continuous learning where employees of different generations can share their unique insights with each other. That in turn helps break down traditional hierarchies, which is obviously what Holly mentioned earlier in her introduction, and it encourages that cross-generational collaboration, which is key to driving innovation. From an external perspective, businesses that are seen to be invested in things like reverse mentoring, it's ultimately signalling to the market that your company values diversity of thought and continuous development, which in turn is obviously going to make you an attractive place to work. It's particularly useful when you're working in a fast changing environment where knowledge transfer between experienced leaders and younger employees can really help bridge those skill gaps and broaden people's perspectives. So from a personal perspective, I've seen it effective in scenarios where people are looking to tackle things like digital transformation or cultural changes in the business, and the reciprocal learning that takes place helps both mentors and mentees understand new trends, things like fresh ideas that they can bring to the table, all the time whilst they're aligning that with the company's goals and objectives.
Brilliant. Thanks, Emma. So Fiona, this next question is for you. So as the reverse mentoring programme lead at Scottish Enterprise, can you tell us a bit more about your current reciprocal learning programme and why it was introduced in the first place?
Yep, thank you very much, Holly. I'll try not to repeat what Emma has just said, because that is the background to reciprocal mentoring. And our programme did start a number of years ago as the typical reverse mentoring programme, where we matched young people and leaders together and they helped each other with that digital transformation and understanding the implications for them as leaders in the organisation, but also for the organisation itself. And we've been running that programme for a number of years. And just about 2 years ago, we started to look at, actually, it is very successful. We've got a really good track record with our young people, and it was fulfilling the needs of our youth strategy. But we began to explore whether or not this is something that we could actually use in other areas, where we were maybe not as strong as we wanted to be. And at the same time, excuse me, our multicultural group were researching reverse mentoring, and we came together to look at, actually, how could we develop a programme across our My Community groups. And this is also where Mark came in, because he was part of that pilot programme. So we developed a reverse mentoring pilot that went much further than just our intergenerational group. It included our multicultural group, our disability group, our LGBT plus group, etc. And they became much more involved in that pilot programme. That was such a success, and I'll let Mark tell you about his own learnings and experiences that came out of that programme, that we decided that this was a programme that we wanted to roll out, but to also develop it a little bit further. So we have now developed a year-long reciprocal mentoring programme, whereby we will have 4 elements to that programme, and that's building on the experiences that came out of the pilot, and also some research that we've done with other organisations. What were they actually doing? So we'd gone out and spoken to other organisations and thought there's some really good practice there that we want to build into our programme. So our current programme has 4 elements to it. First element is a 6-month-long reciprocal mentoring element, where a leader and someone from our My Community groups are matched together and they'll mentor each other. So what the mentor from the group will mentor the senior leader, and then the leader will mentor the individual as well. During that period of time, we'll also explore with each of these groups peer learning and organisational learning. So we'll be looking at the lessons learned from those interactions. The leader will then go on to another 6-month programme of allyship with another My Community group. And that will help them understand the issues that group are facing on a daily basis, some of the issues that they come across, etc. And again, during that 6-month period, we as an organisation will do organisational learning workshops with them. And at the end of that, we will bring all of that together to look at what learning the organisation has taken out of that year-long programme for those leaders that were participating. And we'll then build that into our organisational transformation and things that we need to do as an organisation to become much more inclusive. So does that help? Does that give you an overview?
Yeah, that absolutely does, and I hope it does everyone on the call as well. It sounds very, very well thought out and very comprehensive. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's mentors meeting mentees. So, you know, there's a simplicity element to it as well. What impact do you think, or have you seen that's had on the organisation at Scottish Enterprise?
I think the impact has mostly been at the individual leaders level. And Mark will be able to explore that a little bit further. What we've seen as an organisation is a better understanding of the implications of decisions that may be made, of how we communicate with each other across the organisation, so that employee engagement, how can we take on board the information that has been given to us and respond in a different way. We also have accepted that this is a long-term learning programme for us, so we won't necessarily see the impact at the end of the 6-month mentoring programme. The impact may be 18 months down the line or 2 years down the line, but we have a very robust evaluation process in the organisation. So we will evaluate every programme when we come to the end of it. We've got the organisational learning running through the programme itself, but we also have in our organisation quarterly employee surveys. So the employees can tell us what they're actually thinking at the time. So if things are actually changing slowly, we can actually start to see that trend. And that's how we will know whether or not this programme is being successful and whether or not it's having an impact. We've also decided that all of our leaders will participate in the programme. So it's not something that only a percentage of our leaders will actually participate in. All of our leaders from a certain grade up will participate in the programme. And that way we can ensure we're multiplying the benefits of the learning that's coming out of the programme. And as it is a rolling programme, we will seek to influence and make changes for the next programme that comes on board, so that we should be able to see the transformation as we go through the programme.
Excellent. And I know we've got a question later on, I think it's for Mark, about including all the leadership team and whether there were any challenges there. So we'll get to that point in a sec. So Mark, I'm going to come to you now. So it'd be great to hear from somebody who's experienced the benefits of reverse mentoring firsthand. So how was your experience?
Thanks, Holly. It was great. And, you know, as Fiona says, I'm on the pilot. And so I've been in Scottish Enterprise 20 odd years, as you can tell from my grey hair. So I've done a lot of coaching, a lot of mentoring, official mentoring programs, a lot of CPD. So, you know, you could either say that I'm experienced or I'm a bit worn down by a lot of it, potentially, because I've seen a lot of things. This was really refreshing. And, you know, after an initial bit of hesitation, you know, I signed up really quickly for the pilot, and this became something that was probably the most enjoyable piece of CPD I've done in a long time, and certainly something that both from an enjoyable perspective, but also in terms of the rewarding aspect of that. So, you know, I think it was great. I was lucky, and I would say lucky, but at the same time, I know a lot of work has gone on in the background about making sure there's a good match for people and understanding who it is, and maybe come on to some of that. But getting that match right, my mentor was great, extremely proactive, extremely driven in terms of ensuring that we set the ground rules early in terms of which topics we're going to cover. You know, I was keen to look at things, and certainly prompted, but I was keen to look at things about what's the difference between Gen Z and Gen X. I don't know. What's the difference between that? But then digging a bit deeper. What's the thought process? What's their ambitions? What does that feel like? to be in Scottish enterprise at that younger level. So, you know, a lot of my peer group, my leadership group, cultural references are a bit older. So it was great to dig into some of that. We did a lot of work around diversity and inclusion as well. And as Fiona said, really important, we're bridging the gap into what we're trying to achieve there. So that was good. So nailing a lot of that down early. She made me do my homework. You know, I think it's really important that the mentor really sets the bar for this one and drives it.
Yeah.
You know, and as for us as the mentees, it can be quite easy just to get caught up in the maelstrom of the day job and keep pushing this away. But no, my mentor was making sure I travelled to a different office to meet with her. She would travel to meet with me. We dedicated the time. So I think that was the other biggest learning for me is if you're going to go into this, you got to commit. Commit not just your time when you're with your mentor, but the preparation time to get the most out of that as well. So we spent a lot of time doing that and focusing on, you know, being present as well and engaged. So a lot of that came down to the chemistry between the mentor and the mentee. We did have a lot of fun. As I said, she made me bring biscuits. But we did really go through and agree the topics and make sure we're going through that. And now, you know, I've concluded the process. I still see my mentee on a regular basis. We still exchange communication on various things and we see each other about the office. So I'm more aware, not just about what we covered in the topic, but again, the whole young leaders group across Scottish Enterprise. And it's forced the wrong word, but it's certainly encouraged me to open my eyes and go and engage more widely with our young leaders group. So really, really successful, but also really a lot of fun.
Fantastic. So I'm sure there are many leaders on this call just now or people that work for other organisations who are thinking about potentially doing something on reverse mentoring. So I've got a couple of questions that are related to that. So you did mention earlier, and I know Fiona mentioned this as well, was there any initial reservations that you had when you were first approached to be a mentee?
Yes. I mean, I think it's definitely, as I said, I've done mentoring before the other way.
Yeah.
You know, and I was used to that, and I thought, what's this? Why is it different? So, you know, I was a bit unsure. You know, I've got a crowded diary like everyone else has, and I'm trying to make sure that I fit the right CPD in. And as Fiona said, we're encouraged to do that in Scottish Enterprise. So looking at what that CPD was. So took a couple of conversations, but then after that, once I understood a bit more of what it was about, it was a no-brainer.
So you saw the benefits from the outset.
Absolutely.
Excellent. You have touched upon this already, but if there's any other things that you'd like to share, why do you think your experience has been such a success? What would you put that down to?
I think it probably two things. I think one was the matching.
Yeah.
And you know, I can't stress enough the importance of putting the time into making sure that the matching's right. And it takes, you know, it's a real skill. And you know, Fiona and colleagues really did a lot of work to understand the individual people involved, to understand the mentor group and the mentee group, and make sure the matching was appropriate as well. So so that was one that was really good. And you know, I thought I got lucky, but actually I didn't realise till later on there was a lot of work involved in making that happen and making that happen. And I think the other one was the work that Fiona and the team did again with the mentor group to forget grades, you know, put that to the side. It's about you are mentoring another individual and how do we make sure we get the most out of that. So for me, having a mentor that was challenging, demanding, and focused in terms of what it was we wanted to achieve together. So, you know, I found that really useful. Quite often with these kind of things, you could perhaps get a mentor who is a bit more shy, a bit concerned about working with senior individuals in the organisation. But again, the pre-work and making sure the mentors knew what they were going to achieve was really, really beneficial. So two things there, Holly, both really about good preparation, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So there you are, guys. If anyone's thinking about doing that, you got to get the preparation and the matching right between mentor and mentee for sure. Fiona, I'm going to come back to you now. So again, I think that, you know, because people were now thinking about how could we do this in our organisation. Are there any tactics that you can share with the group today which helped you guys get it off the ground in the first instance?
I think in terms of tactics, we do have a good history of coaching and mentoring in the organisation. So for us, it was about ensuring that we had senior leaders buy-in to the programme, to this different element of the programme, and expanding it out just from multi-generation to other areas of the business. So I think there's a lot of stakeholder management that you've got to do there. For us, it was really important that we do have a coaching and mentoring strategy in the organisation. And it was really important to emphasise that this was part of that strategy and what we were trying to achieve with the organisation. And this was just one more element of how we were wanting to achieve our goals for the organisation. So I think it's really important to have something that you can tap into to say, this is why we're exploring this, rather than this is just a good idea. You have to have that business benefit there that you can demonstrate. Otherwise, there's no reason for people to do it. There has to be a business benefit, and you have to tap into that. I think also, and it's building on what Mark has explained, you have to do your groundwork. Mm-hmm. You just can't expect reverse mentoring to happen and to work. You have to make sure that you've got all the prep done beforehand, that you have the correct matching between the individuals, that you've got the support there for them, they've got the training there for the mentors so that they know what their role is in terms of mentoring. And probably another major tip that I would say is, don't be afraid to ask folks what they're doing and how they've done it. You know, we certainly, when we were looking to expand the programme and deliver the pilot, we spoke to other people. And at the end of that pilot, we spoke to other organisations to look at what was good practice, what were others getting out of the programme, and look at how we could tailor that to our organisation. And tailoring is really important. Tailor it to your organisation so that everyone can take ownership of it. So what will work in one organisation may not necessarily work in another, but if you tailor it to meet the needs of your organisation, then you're more likely to be successful.
Fiona, I was going to jump in with a question there actually. How did you empower your junior employees to sign up to be mentors?
For our junior ones, it's actually it's part of the confidence building of our young people. Mm-hmm. You know, as well as having a coaching and mentoring strategy, we do have a youth strategy as well, or an intergenerational strategy. And as part of the culture of our organisation, we want to ensure that our young people do have a voice. Mm-hmm. What you have to do, though, is give them the confidence that their voice is actually relevant. So everything we do with our young people is about building their confidence. The programmes that they go through, the activity, they all have a buddy themselves. They all have a mentor themselves. So they're used to that process. And you can get them to the stage where they're now ready to be a mentor in terms of the reverse mentoring programme. I wouldn't say all of our young people are ready at the same time. It's got to be at the time that they're ready for it, because they all develop at different stages. And it's really about knowing your young people, understanding what their drivers are, what stage they are in their career, in their maturity, and being able to bring them along into the programme at the time that the programme's going to work for them as an individual. So it's about knowing your young people.
Okay.
I'm going to throw another one in here as well. So when it came up, because we talked a lot about the matching and getting the matching right, was there a process that you guys did to match mentor and mentee together? And if so, how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, I don't know if you would call it a process, but I know all of the mentors in the organisation pretty well, because like Mark, I've been in the organisation a very long time, and I've been working with individuals in their development for a very long time. So I know the individuals really well, and I also know our young people really well. And when we expanded it to the other groups, I also knew those individuals very well. And if I didn't know them, I spent some time getting to know them, getting to know their drivers, getting to know what was going to be a positive outcome for them. And then it was me using my knowledge of those individuals to bring them together.
Okay.
And then we ask them to have what we call a chemistry meeting. And that chemistry meeting is for them to decide, is this going to work? Are we going to be able to come together? Or are we going to have issues and it's not going to work? I'm not going to have the trust, or I'm not confident enough for that individuals. And bearing in mind that one of the individuals on our pilot was our chief exec. So, you know, we're asking our colleagues to take on something that could be quite challenging for them as an individual. But I think when you know the individuals, it's easier to put them together. But you must ensure you have that chemistry meeting. And at that stage, we explained to both the mentor and the mentee, from the chemistry meeting, you can come back to me, and if it's not going to work, then that's absolutely fine. We match you with somebody else. Because that's not an issue, because we need to ensure before you go into the relationship that you are actually going to be able to have a relationship. And I have to say, in the 20 odd years that I've been matching people together, I've probably had one or two instances where folks have come back to me to say, no, I think I would prefer to have somebody else. So it's just down to my experience. And also my colleague who supports me in matching. It's our knowledge of the individuals, which is really important. So the key there is get to know your mentees, get to know your mentors, and then you can help forge those relationships positively.
It was a complete human approach. There was no algorithm in sight.
No algorithm in sight. It is absolutely 100% a human approach to making a partnership come together, because you know, at the end of the day, they are two human beings.
Absolutely.
So no algorithm is going to be able to say whether or not it's going to work. You also have to have your mentor and your mentee both have to have clear goals.
Yes.
Because if your goals are at different levels and not very clear, then that matching can't happen in a positive way. You need to have absolutely clear goals before you start the process.
And that leads me on to my next question, actually, because you know, you need to have the aligned goals to begin with in order then to measure. So you did touch upon your ongoing measurement earlier, but just to reiterate for the group, how did you measure the success of the programme, and how are you continuing to measure the success of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Mark can maybe give his experience of being a part of that evaluation process.
Yes.
So that evaluation process was a number of questions based on the understanding of your goals, whether or not your goals were met. So your general evaluation criteria, but also conversations, again, with the individual, so that we were able to have those anecdotal sets of information from their feelings of being in the programme. So we had the written evaluation work based on what were your goals to begin with? Did we meet those goals? What was the learning that came out of it? What recommendations would you make for programmes going forward, etc. So all your general evaluation questions that you would have, but also that conversation piece, which is bringing the anecdotal information into the overall process. And also case studies. So having some case studies, the ability to say to Mark, can we write this up as a case study so that we can explain to others, etc. But first of all, you've got your evaluation criteria, which then tells you whether or not you've met the goals of the programme and of the individuals to begin with. So that's really important. And then your anecdotal conversational information that you can bring to back up that evaluation material. So there was 2 elements of it.
Yeah. And Mark, how did you find the evaluation and the measurement experience from your point of view?
I think Fiona described it well in terms of the organisational approach, but the individual approach, I think it was good to know the programme was time bound. You know, and again, we set out objectives at the beginning, as Fiona highlights. But then the mentor and I sat down at the end, and I think there's a lot. They're just about, did we achieve what we wanted to achieve here on a personal level between the two of us, and how are we going? So we did have a discussion about how we're going to use this. So you know, a lot of what we did was focused around generational aspects, around diversity and inclusion. I work in the international part of our business. My mentor was of German origin, living in Scotland, so we covered a lot of international themes. So again, a lot of what we discussed really helped me going forward, and you know, again, with that benefit. But as I say, we've now got that touch point, so we are picking up, and I asked a few questions since then. So there's some ongoing activity, as I mentioned, but I think it's really important that the two of you sit down at the end and say, what did we achieve there, and let's reflect on that experience.
You're both happy. You're both happy with the result on a personal level. So, yeah, exactly. Absolutely. So to wrap up this questioning session of the webinar, and then we'll move on to the chat questions. You guys have said a lot of benefits, Fiona and Mark, already. So just as a bit of a wrap up, is there any other advice that you would give other employers who are considering introducing a similar programme? And that's to both Fiona and Mark.
I think the simple thing would be, yes, just do it. But, you know, there's lots of programs out there. You know, we run things like Fika, you know, where we have random matching for conversations, and you know, we encourage people to speak to people in the office that you don't know and have a conversation and give up time. I think the benefit of this one is this is a structured program, very clear about what we want to achieve, and it really flips that organisational dynamic as we've spoken about. So, you know, lots of things out there, but for that purpose, you know, this one is you know, stands out a bit more than some of the others for me.
Yeah, and I would probably you know, repeat that. I think it's really important to have that clarity and everyone to understand and know what their goal is. Why are we doing it? If you don't have that clarity, it's really difficult to get people to engage. But once you have that clarity and they understand what they're going to get from the programme, what they're going to put into the programme, and also sure you have that underlying strategy and training that will help folk take that forward. I think that's key to ensuring the success of the programme.
Fantastic. Thank you all very much. Now, we do have some questions in the Q&A. I know the audience, you won't be able to see that because we've got settings on where you can't see all the questions that have come through. But I've got them on my screen here. So I will read out each question and see how many we can get through. So the first question, again, is for you, Fiona. So what challenges or resistance did you get from stakeholders when establishing and piloting the programme, and how did you overcome them and get buy-in from the senior mentees this time? So we talked about the junior guys, but how did you get buy-in from the senior mentees?
I think for us as an organisation, as Mark has already said, we really do encourage CPD. In the organisation, everyone is encouraged to set aside time for their own CPD, whether or not that's formal or informal CPD activities. And we also try, in everything we do, we try to encourage a form of coaching or mentoring, no matter what it is that an individual is actually doing. So so that coaching and mentoring are just the way we do things in the organisation. So we're trying to encourage that, just as our philosophy in the organisation, we have a coaching culture, and that's the way we do things. And I think from our perspective, the only challenge was, how much time is this going to take? Because we're all incredibly busy.
Yeah.
But I think once you can explain to folks what the clear goals are, what we're trying to achieve, and how we're going to achieve it, that they're not just going to be left on their own to have conversations that are just random conversations, that it is a structured programme, there is support there, then it was much easier for folks to say, well, okay, for us, we'll come on board and we'll give this a try. So much so now that we've got a waiting list.
Wow. Okay.
So we have leaders coming to us saying, when's the next cohort? I want to be in the next one. Don't forget me. I want to be in your next cohort. And I think it's about that communication. If we're really clear in our communication, what we're trying to do, what we're trying to achieve, they can see the business benefit of that. And if you can see the business benefit, then you can justify it.
Excellent. So it helps if you've already got a very strong coaching and mentoring culture, but if you communicate this effectively and importantly, what's in it for them? So what's in it for you as that senior leader? What are you going to get out of it? It's almost selling in a sense, isn't it? It's like, let me understand what you need and let me show you how this is going to help. Brilliant. Thank you, Fiona. The next one I think is probably best for Emma to answer. So Emma, good question actually. How can we adopt reverse mentoring if we don't have an L&D team or an infrastructure?
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. So you absolutely can adopt a reverse mentoring scheme in place without a formal L&D team. I actually have two friends and two separate businesses who are actually in the point of launching this, and they don't have internal formal L&D teams. So I would say you should start small with a pilot program that pairs employees from different departments or levels in a structured way. I think, like it's already been highlighted in the webinar today, always begin by clarifying what are those clear goals. What do you want to achieve during it and post, and what will success look like to us as a business? Fiona highlighted earlier that it's really important that it aligns with the business that you're in. Whether that's we want to improve communication, we want to drive innovation across the business, we want to develop our leadership skills. So really having those clear objectives and goals at the start is going to help you guide that process. I think also, relating back to what Mark said earlier, it's really important you have a clear structure as well in terms of cadence and timings and how long it's actually going to run for. There's also loads of things online that you can lean on, so different existing resources. There's lots of online guides, there's mentorship platforms to facilitate or help you facilitate those relationships that you're trying to put into play there. I think what matters most out of everything is just making sure that you've got an environment or culture where both a mentor and mentee both feel valued and supported during that process.
Absolutely. Thanks, Emma. But a few more coming through. Okay, so this one's, I guess, probably best answered by Emma or Fiona. It's talking about women in tech. So as a woman in tech, I feel this program will be very beneficial at my company. What are your thoughts on this?
Want to take it, Fiona?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, well, we can both join in with that. So I do think that's a really, important topic. I completely agree that reverse mentoring can help improve female representation in tech. By pairing women in tech with senior leaders, we're going to create opportunities for them to share their perspective, their views on things. It's going to allow them to build better relationships and, give them better career visibility at the end of the day. It's also a really good way for senior leaders to better understand, I guess, the barriers that women face in the tech industry, which then is going to lead to more inclusive policies and practices, because ultimately those senior leaders are the people hold the key to be able to influence that. So reverse mentoring, in a sense, is you're actually going to then use it as a tool for change across the business. I think it's really important, especially, you know, within that tech industry and influencing, you know, that quite stark percentage there.
Yeah, and I think I would add in there that absolutely it's an ideal situation to use for reverse mentoring, but you need to capture that. You need to capture what are the business benefits and what would be the benefits for the senior leaders in the organisation to be mentoring females. So what are they going to get out of it? But also, what are the females going to achieve from doing this? So if you can capture everything that Emma just said into some form of paper or a strategy and how you're actually going to implement that change in the organisation, it gives more strength to you being able to develop that programme of activity.
Thank you. So we've now got quite a few questions coming through thick and fast, so I'm just wanting to select the right ones. This one's interesting. I think I understand the question. I'll ask it and then see what you guys think. So it says, have the insights from the junior mentors changed how you present to your business? Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Well, Holly, one of the things that I'm currently wrestling with is succession planning.
Yes.
You know, and you know, a lot, you know, and certainly in the areas of business I work in, you know, again, we're at the upper end of the age profiles, and we're looking at how we succession plan properly, and really putting in place some of the learning that I had, you know, because I mentioned Gen Z, Gen X, you know, kind of jokingly earlier, but it was really important in terms of understanding the thinking of career aspirations. How quickly do people expect to move up the career ladder? How many jumps do they expect? What's their aspiration over the next few years? So again, a lot of the input that I got through that session is helping me look at the succession planning in a different way for our part of the business. And on the back of that, I've gone back to the young leaders group who also have a pilot now looking at people who are about to retire and looking at how they retain the knowledge. Some of the knowledge, and they retain everything for a 30, 40-year career, but people leaving the business who desperately don't want to leave without imparting some knowledge. And our young leaders have put a programme together now about how they can buddy up with them for a period of time before they retire. So taking all of that on board, really coming through how we succession plan better as an organisation who have, correct me in the language around this, Fiona, but certainly the age profile is towards the higher end, and we need to look at how we address some of that through our succession planning.
Thank you, Mark. I've also got an interesting question here. Which one should I choose? It's a double-barreled question, so this can go. It's probably best suited to Mark. What's the best takeaway / insight you got from a mentee that surprised you?
Oh, that's a great question, isn't it? Well, I think one throwaway one was I used too many cultural references that are stuck in the 80s, and I'm trying to amend that. But on a more serious note, I think one of the biggest takeaways was the last one that I just mentioned, was actually understanding the aspiration, the speed of aspiration that our young leaders have for moving through the organisation at pace. You know, I maybe had a wee bit more dated based on my own experience and friends' experience about how you move through different grades in a business. So, you know, that really struck home, the difference between our collective thinking around that, which I've tried to use. But yeah, that was a bit of an eye-opener for me.
I bet. Another one's just popped in. What strategies, probably more suited to yourself, Fiona, what strategies do you use to ensure open and honest communication across the business?
What strategies for open and honest communication? I think anyone from within our organisation will know that I've always got open and honest communication with them. I tell them exactly how I see things. There's Mark nodding. I think from our perspective, it comes down to that clarity. If we're clear about what we're trying to achieve and we communicate that through our different avenues, whether or not it's a strategy or whether or not it's our people managers all come together on a monthly basis for a people manager call, so expressing it in that terms, actually telling them what we're trying to achieve through that communication. We also have people manager newsletters. We have communication that comes out on a weekly basis to all of our staff. So it's using all of our communication opportunities to explain what we're trying to achieve, and also be really honest about when things are not working. You know, so you're not going to get everything right all the time, but be really honest about what's not working for you and why you're going to try and do things in a different way, and ensuring again you're using all those communication avenues to express that and to let people find out about it in the way that they prefer their communications. So one communication channel doesn't fit everyone. So if you have multiple communication channels, you're more likely to influence a wider audience.
Brilliant. Thank you, Fiona. I've got a question here as well. It's more of a straightforward question. Was there a sponsor of the programme?
I think in terms of sponsor, we do have a coaching and mentoring strategy. So all of our strategies are approved at our very senior leaders level. So we would say our senior leaders are the sponsor. However, in particular for the pilot that Mark was on, our chief exec was part of that pilot. And what we have found for different iterations as our programme has progressed, our chief exec has always been on board. So that individual would be our primary sponsor. If you don't have your chief exec on board, you know, you're never going to get things to happen. So we have been fortunate in that every single one of our chief execs has been really supportive of our coaching and mentoring support and everything that we've done under that banner. So, you know, if anything, it would be our chief exec, and absolutely our own executive leadership team member, because the way our business works, we all have an executive leadership team member. That executive leadership team member is also a champion for our coaching and mentoring approach.
Excellent. I'm sorry, I'm just going to say to everybody, I won't be able to get through all of your questions. It's brilliant. Everyone's asking so many questions, but we've not got time to get through all of them. So I'm just choosing the ones that I know we haven't covered. There are a few in here that we've covered the content, so I wouldn't want the speakers to repeat themselves. There is one here that's worth mentioning. Do you feel that mentoring and reverse mentoring can be done effectively remotely?
That's a very good question. If you'd asked me 5 years ago or even 6 years ago, I would have said no, coaching and mentoring should take place face-to-face. COVID completely changed my view on that. And yeah, absolutely, it can take place over Teams or in the virtual environment. You know, I'm a great advocate of using face-to-face when it's appropriate, and Teams or whatever platform you're using at an appropriate time as well. So absolutely, yeah, it can happen in the virtual environment, and there's nothing to stop it from happening in the virtual environment. You still can develop those relationships. I would say it's ideal if you can meet face-to-face at least once.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be concerned if it's not possible. So we've got people in different parts of the country mentoring each other. We've got people in different countries coaching each other. So it does work in that virtual environment.
Holly, I would just add in there as well. I actually think it's a benefit to some businesses to be able to do it on a virtual platform. Completely agree with what Fiona says. I think there's massive benefits to face-to-face, and if you can, obviously, maybe not if you're in different countries, but a free trip's always nice. But I think, you know, a quarterly meetup, etc., is great. But actually, we talked about earlier, you don't need a huge financial budget to kick off a reverse mentoring program. But what you do need is a time budget and a time allocation. And obviously, with face-to-face comes obviously the time piece of it in terms of travel, etc. Whereas obviously virtual is a lot more accessible and more friendly on your time, your times and diary commitments. So I actually think it's a benefit to companies to be able to do it that way.
Yeah, one thing I would add in terms of time for the mentor, we always ask our mentors to build in half an hour before their meeting with their mentee and half an hour afterwards. And that half an hour before is to get them into the right frame of mind, to block out time in their diary so they're not rushing from one thing to another, particularly if you're in the Teams environment or the virtual environment. We tend to run meetings back to back. So you want to be in the right frame of mind, and you want to ensure that you've done your proper preparation for your meeting. And then half an hour after your meeting, in order that you as a mentor can do some reflection on the conversation that you've had with your mentee. So if you have an hour session, we're really asking the mentor to block out 2 hours.
Perfect. I've actually got a question as well, which links to one that's I'm going to ask in the Q&A. I'm going to get to it. So every session that mentor and mentee had together, did each one have a topic pre-planned? Yeah. So so that was communicated with how did that work?
I think that was essential. Certainly in my case, we plotted out. I said it was the sessions. Obviously, the program's time bound, so we plotted out a number of things in a sort of brainstorming session at the beginning that we wanted to cover, and predominantly what I wanted to cover and what I wanted to get out of it as the mentee. And then we tweaked that a wee bit because we got some learning as we started to go through it and thought, oh, actually, that topic's really important. I really never thought of that before, and we would add that into the program. But every session was structured, and every session had an element of preparation, or in particular with my mentor, who would go away and do some work, do some research, ping me over articles, bits of research that we would then discuss once we come into the session itself. So again, can't emphasize enough the importance of the preparation aspect. So you're not just rolling into it from another meeting, as Fiona says.
Yeah. And this next one I wanted to get to was, I'm going to change this question slightly to the person that asked it. They've put, what would you class as the biggest success of the programme so far and why? So it's either what would you class as the biggest success, or who, I guess. So, you know, was there a particular pairing that was a roaring success? So is there anything that you can share there that went really, really well and the reason that it was such a success?
You better say me, Fiona.
Sorry?
You better say me.
You. I was actually going to say you. I was actually going to say, well, Mark's pairing, they're a fantastic advocate for our programme. They really have been, you know, one of our greatest successes. I would say to single out one, if I was asked to single out one, it would be Mark's pairing, and that's why he's here today, because he is absolutely a fantastic advocate for the programme. But I think there was learning for all of our leaders on the programme. Mm-hmm. You know, and we only were able to see that learning for the entire group when we were actually doing the evaluation and we were drawing the information out. But we could see as the programme was going on the difference in the pairs. So for the mentor and for the mentee, the levels of confidence were growing. They were looking into other things that they weren't expecting to at the beginning. And when I was doing supervision with the mentors, their level of confidence in terms of, people are actually recognising our thoughts, our experiences, and what we can bring to the table, was just wonderful to watch those changes happen from the individuals who, some of them quite junior members in the organisation, who maybe felt that, you know, I'm with a senior leader and what can I bring to the table? But everybody's got something that they can bring to the table that someone can learn from. And just to see them growing in confidence and understand that actually I do have a voice, and people in this organisation are willing to listen and to explore things with us. So on that one-to-one basis, as supervisor for the mentors, I was able to see how the mentors were growing during that process, but also our leaders were becoming absolute advocates, and Mark is our greatest advocate. His peering was really successful, and we will continue to use Mark as an example. So yeah, they're all at different levels, so I wouldn't say they were all at the same level, but Mark's peering was definitely a fantastic success for us.
Fantastic. Everybody improved. Mark's just kind of star people from the programme. Okay, so listen, there are a few questions that I've not managed to get to, everybody, so apologies for that. Thanks again to our speakers, Emma, Mark and Fiona, and thank you all for attending today. You will get a follow-up email, everybody on the call, with a recording of the session, and for those questions that weren't answered, if you've got and also any follow-up questions, please do feel free to reach out to our speakers if you want any specific questions answering. But for now, thank you very much for your time and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.